Hello, I'm Maciej Mikos and you're watching World Talks. Russia rejects Ukraine's offer of an Easter ceasefire as Kyiv joins the US negotiators and NATO Secretary Mark Rutte for another round of peace talks. And to talk about the latest from Ukraine, we're joined by Aaron Korewa, Director of the Warsaw Office of the Atlantic Council. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for accepting the invitation. So it's not the first time that Russia rejects a Ukrainian ceasefire proposal. Why is Kyiv still asking Moscow for these?
I don't think they're asking Moscow. I think that this is a message more aimed at the United States, kind of showing President Trump mainly that the Ukrainians are willing to for a ceasefire, for peace, for talks, all these things that President Trump for a long time, unfortunately, was accusing the Ukrainians of not doing. I think the message is directed rather to him than to the Russians. The Russians are not going to agree to any kind of ceasefire for Easter or supposedly, religious occasions or whatever other thing. They're only going to agree to a ceasefire when they're forced to.
I see. And it is highly symbolic because it's Easter holidays, right? And Donald Trump and his administration, they are deeply religious.
Well, they at least say they are.
Well, they pray, right? Okay. So peace negotiations.
Some are. Yeah.
Some are, right. Peace negotiations, as we said in the very beginning, are taking place right now. What should we expect? What will be the outcome of this video, as a matter of fact, meeting?
I don't think much is going to be accomplished. But again, I give credit to the Ukrainians. Let's put it this way: I give credit to the Ukrainians that they have sort of understood that it's very important to show again the U.S. president that they're willing to do these talks, that they're willing to, sit down there and tie it down and continue while being clear about what their positions are. And it's good that those positions are repeated and enforced and said that they will not, budge under any kind of pressure. But again, to clarify and show again that they're serious about these things. I don't expect any major breakthrough. I heard the other day there was some sort of accusation directed against Zelensky that, or rather, it was Zelensky who said that the U.S. told him that unless he pulls out of Donbass.
And not for the first time.
Yeah, not for the first time. There will be no security guarantees. Then Marco Rubio said, well, this isn't true. We didn't actually say that. We simply conveyed what the Russian position is. And I believe I'm quoting the Secretary of State correctly when he said that, well, our job, we don't put forward, we don't advocate for this. We just say what the Russian position is. And then we're trying to find some sort of middle ground between them. Well, as long as the United States has this kind of attitude, and we're not going to get a breakthrough simply because there is no middle ground. It's that simple. This is not a war about territory. This is a war from the Russian perspective on Ukrainian statehood. And this is something that the Ukrainians are not going to compromise on, for understandable reasons. The Russian ambassador to the United Kingdom, this was a while ago even, this isn't news either, they've repeated this over and over again, said that our demands are basically Ukraine's unconditional surrender. And the Ukrainians are not going to accept that, and they shouldn't. There is no reason for it.
Right, now...
As long as the Americans believe that their job is to find some sort of middle ground, this is going to fail. That's not the job of the Americans. What the Americans should be doing is putting all their weight behind Ukraine, because the United States is much stronger than Russia, especially if you add all the allies to that. All that put together will simply force Russia to back off from their maximalist positions. Until you do that, they're not going to change their position.
If the US stays in NATO, right?
Well, the U.S. will stay in NATO because the previously mentioned Marco Rubio, when he was a senator, also put together a bill which makes it extremely difficult for the president to pull out of NATO. And by the way, I don't think President Trump wants to pull out of NATO. I think he says a lot of these things because this is the one trick that he has, right? He has formed a lot of his worldview based on his time as a real estate developer in New York, where you say something, very extreme over here in order to get the other side's attention. And he believes that this is a successful method for getting the European allies to spend more on their own defense. Well, I don't think he wants to pull out of NATO.
That used to be the case, but now he's getting really serious about it. And do you think he would have some problems getting all the necessary majority in the Congress to pull out of NATO?
Yes. because the view, I mean, not even even within the so-called MAGA movement, to the extent that it's a coherent movement, and it really isn't. It's basically a big tent organization. It is the overwhelming majority of the people who call themselves MAGA, and I'm just talking about that now, never mind the whole entire Republican Party, are overwhelmingly pro-NATO. And so is the Republicans, and especially in the Senate. And in order to pull out of NATO, you need the majority in the Senate. You're just not going to get it. I think this is a time. We've seen this movie before. Donald Trump is upset about something. He will say something, extreme over here. Then eventually they get together, they talk. Mark Rutte says something, and the whole thing kind of, it kind of quiets down. Right now, he's upset about the lack of support on the Iran conflict. I believe it's part of that.
So, what do you expect from his speech tonight?
From Donald Trump's speech?
Yep. Well, he's supposed to talk about Iran and NATO as well.
Right. Well, I would suppose that he's on Iran. He's been sort of jumping around a lot on what the aims of this whole thing is. I think lately he's kind of been talking about a sort of a timetable of 2-3 weeks, realizing that nobody in the United States wants this to go on forever. But also, on the other hand, because if you both reports, both from Israel and from the U.S., is that a lot of the strategic aims, to the extent of degrading Iran's ability to fight, have been achieved already. Now the Israelis said a while ago that we're sort of running out of targets. It's like, okay, well, how much more? then what's the point of continuing, right? I mean, in a sense, it would be a way to sort of declare the whole thing, completed, and then probably look at a way of getting out of it. And I'm sure there's going to be a nasty comment here directed against the Europeans for lack of support and so on and so forth.
Let's get back to Ukraine, to the negotiations over Ukraine. Now, it's something different today because NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has joined the talks. So should we expect, something on security guarantees, maybe?
The security guarantees there's no point in talking about security guarantees unless the United States is serious about them. Or rather, like this, there are two ways of achieving that. One way is that the United States takes a step forward is actually being serious about these things. So far, we have not seen that, and I find it unlikely that Donald Trump is going to change his mind there because there's simply no incentive for him to do so. On the other hand, what could happen and should happen is that the Europeans step up and basically declare something to the effect that we are prepared to take a bigger responsibility for the security of Ukraine. And that will be good for many reasons, because it would also convince Trump that the Europeans are serious about security in Europe, which is a time-honored goal of his. So a lot of this has to do with messaging. When the Europeans time and time show that they are not actually ready to put their money where their mouth is, that unfortunately reinforces the more negative sentiments that Trump has about Ukraine, because he sees this as a whole of the European allies not sort of footing the bill for the security of Europe.
Right. You said that Russia's goal is to conquer the whole of Ukraine.
Not necessarily to conquer all of it, but to destroy Ukraine as a viable independent state. Basically take as much territory as they feel that they need or want, and turn the rest of Ukraine into sort of a rump state like Belarus. This has been the goal of the Russians from the beginning.
I'll see. Now, the latest narrative from the Kremlin is sort of like withdraw from the cities in Donbas. Otherwise, we will invade the rest of the country.
Well, I'm not surprised that they would say that. To which I would say then, well, it's been the latest casualty figures now is over 1 million. Look forward to another 1 million dead Russians then, at least, if that's what you want. And, this notion that Russians can just absorb never-ending amounts of casualties is not true. There's going to be a breaking point. There is a breaking point for that. It's just a matter of getting there. This is it's a propaganda show from the Russian side.
I see. But if we're talking about numbers, how many more have to die?
Well,
for President Putin to reconsider his goals in Ukraine?
We don't know that yet. What we do know is that the breaking point exists. All we have to do is look at history, right? World War I is a good example. This giant Russian army, eventually, they're sitting somewhere in what's now Poland. It's like, well, what are we here for, really? And when that happens, it happens very quickly. That's one of the things about Russian history is that often, nothing happens, nothing, and then everything at the same time. So we can't predict exactly where that is. What we do know is that Russia is under considerable strain. I mean, we have the so-called patriots over there and the ones who are most pro-war and are super critical of Putin, saying that, basically there's been many reports on that those voices are more and more critical of the government. We know that the Russian economy, despite the propaganda, nice face that they're trying to put on, is in real trouble. And so, and of course they can't go on. I mean, it's pretty much a numbers game.
But can Ukraine hold on until this Russian breaking point? Because, the commander-in-chief, General Syrskyi, stated lately that it faces some shortages in military personnel, and that's been going on for quite a long time. But now it seems that these problems are sort of critical.
Well, yeah, I mean, Ukraine's had a manpower problem for a while. On the other hand, I mean, I was listening to one of the first interviews, I believe, ever made with this Ukraine drone specialist, the guy known as Magyar, was talking about, well, yes, there is a manpower problem, but in a way, the drones could offset that under the condition that they're produced on scale. So it's a resource problem. So if Ukraine is left alone, that's going to be very difficult. But if the combined weight of the West is put behind Ukraine, then Russia's in trouble. So it's really just a matter of will. For instance, one of the what you could call hidden benefits for Ukraine of the war in Iran is the fact that Zelensky has been successful in going to all these Arab Gulf countries, right? Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar, and signing some really serious deals. In Qatar, they signed a co-production deal, not some training, strategic, whatever, ambiguous document. No, co-production on these Ukrainian drone interceptors. Because, of course, the Qataris have a problem with the Shahed drones now, because Iran is using Shahed drones. The Ukrainians have a lot of experience in how to countering that on the cheap, which is something that, we in the United States, we're good at fighting war, but not fighting war on the cheap. We're not very good at that. The Ukrainians are good at it. And in exchange for that, they will get investment from the Gulf countries who have a lot of money. So this is also, why is this important? Because once again, it proves, and this is one of the if there's one thing I would, like to sort of, send one message, is that it's high time that the West, and America in particular, understands that Ukraine is not an aid project. It's a strategic asset. It is very important for the defense of Europe and for the defense of, basically, again, look at the fact that they're helping our allies in the Gulf. Who would have thought about that when this war started?
Aaron Korewa, Director of the Warsaw Center of the Atlantic Council, was our guest this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And thank you for watching, and stay with us for more interviews here on TVP World.